Howdy, everybody. All right, so you made it this far. So welcome to the third and final actual coding video of this series. And so we're finally getting to the JavaScript part. Now, the fun thing about this is, like I said earlier, if you watch the intro video, I spent literally about 2 days trying to figure out how to do this. Originally I thought, hey, I can do a cassette timeout within a function. Well, that didn't work, at least not the way I was trying to do it. And, tried a couple other things. Ultimately, after 2 days of kind of digging through Stack Overflow, forums, docs, you name it, I finally worded a question, I guess appropriately, enough that I was able to find a JS Fiddle that someone had a link to in Stack Overflow that had a animation that basically played, and then it triggered this other event, right? It triggered a page load after that. And they actually use jQuery for it. So we're going to throw a little bit of jQuery in here. I don't use jQuery that often, but in this particular case, it worked. So that's what we're going to go ahead and use here for this specific thing. And I do actually have I will be putting a link in the description here. And if you go to my code pin, I also have some links there for the individual who, I believe his name was Terry, who wrote the initial JS Fiddle. That was kind of the inspiration for the jQuery function here, and kind of got me started with that. So special shout out to him. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the JavaScript. So what we're going to do here first is really set up some variables that are just going to reference the IDs for the elements that we're going to be targeting later on. So to do that, I'm going to start off here real quick and just do a const and say animate. And for this, we're going to get the button this way. So we're going to do a document dot get element by ID. And that was animated. Oh, animated button, sorry. Cool. And so that's why I went ahead and put the IDs in there originally in the HTML, was so I could call it later on here a little bit easier. So that's why we did that there. There's other ways to call it and stuff, but I think this is probably one of the just quickest ways to do it. Cool. And then also we're going to additionally do a const animated div. And what that's going to be doing is that's going to be grabbing that actual div that we created earlier, the animated div. One last thing while I'm thinking about it, on the last video, I had deleted the non-animated portion of this here and changed it to this. We're going to actually go ahead and set that back to non-animated div. So just in case you were following along and did that and hadn't set it back, go ahead and do that now over here. Because what we're going to be doing with the JavaScript is actually changing the class from non-animated div to animated div in order to trigger the animation here in a bit. So, and we'll go over how to do that here in just a second. So, cool. So now that we have the variables declared here, and you don't necessarily have to declare the variables. I mean, you could just do a document.get element by ID and then do the function behind it. But this way, I'm not having to write out that every single time. So, and this was animated. So that's not declared there. Cool. So basically what we got here is the button right down here, animated button, is going to be referenced by this. In fact, actually, we'll change this to button instead. So we'll call it trigger button. Call it trigger button, and then we'll call this animated div there. All right, cool. So basically now a trigger button is going to reference the button here, and then animated div is going to reference the animated here, the div here. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and write the function that's going to actually trigger the animation. So this is going to be just straight JavaScript, nothing too fancy here, anything like that. I'm going to write it as an arrow function, but you could also do it as a normal function as well. It's kind of just a personal preference there for this one. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to say animated div dot class name, and then we're going to set that now equal to animated div. And that should be it. So now if we save this, what we're going to need to do before we can actually do this on the browser, in the browser, is we're going to come in here, and I'm just going to do a script tag right here just above the closing body tag. And oops, no, we'll do it this way. And we're going to link that to our script.js file, which is the one right here. So it's in the same directory and everything. Okay, and now that should, let me save that. If we get rid of the old live server there and then make a new one, should trigger the animation, but it is not for some reason. Why is it not? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, of course. I forgot to actually set the trigger here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put an on-click event here, and that is going to call the function here. So and for some reason my fingers are betraying me right now as I'm trying to type. Okay, cool. All right, so that now should, when we click, it should call the trigger animation, which is then going to run this function over here. Oh, yeah, that's right. I have to close that out and then restart. Make sure I spelled everything correctly too. Cool. All right, and there we go. So now we've called that function successfully. So when we click the button, it now triggers that animation. So since we have it set to only play that one time, it's not going to transition back because obviously it's already at that last keyframe. So so that is that, which is fine for what we want. Again, you could play around with the animation timings and all of that if you didn't want it to, if you wanted to be able to replay again or something. And again, we'll go over that more in an actual video where I go over just animations in general. So cool, but we basically have it now, at least the basic setup. So now what we want to do though is we want to have that animation play, and then once it completes, we want it to actually load another page. So to do that, we're going to use that jQuery I was talking about. But in order for us to use that, we are going to need to actually bring that in from an external source. So here, just above that script tag that we just wrote for the JavaScript, we're just going to cut and paste this in. Now you can actually get this from, if you just go search for jQuery's website, you can get their link information here, which may or may not be the same when you watch this video. But for right now, the version that they have is 3.51. And I'll put a link in the description as well below to where you can get this. So but we have to put that in there first. We go ahead and save that. Then we can actually run the jQuery here, which I am actually going to start off here. So we're going to do the little jQuery $, and then we're going to look for that animated element, and it's going to basically listen for any of the following events, but basically it's an animation end event. Now I'm going to copy and paste this because they're including some WebKit in here as well. But basically it's just, we're looking for the animation end. So whenever the animation that's attached to this ID ends, it's going to run a function. So we're going to put a comma there. Oops, sorry. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to put a comma there. Then we're going to put the parentheses. We're going to hit enter. And now we're going to put the function here. And now we're going to actually tell it what we want it to do. So I'm going to say window.location href, which is basically just going to open the link that I put in here in the existing window. So it's going to replace whatever was already in that window. In this case, what we're going to do is, and you can do an external link if you wanted to, you can do an internal link. If you go to my code pin, it actually links directly to my portfolio site. But since I'm updating that soon, I didn't want to put that link in this video because it'll be an old site by the time you probably watch this video. So what I'm going to do instead is I had created a HTML page that just has a link that links back to the home page. So we're just going to go ahead and go to that. And that's just going to be this next.html. So what that's going to do is basically it's going to listen to this ID. Whenever it sees that the animation is ended, it's going to take this anonymous function here and it's going to run this, which is going to change the window that we have displayed to go to this link here, which is going to become that index or that next HTML page, which we will show in just a second. And I will probably close this again. Awesome. And now if I trigger that animation, it should play. And then once it completes, it should go here. So now we've gone to the next page and we can just return home. And I can come back over here. I can trigger that animation again and rinse and repeat. And again, you could do this to other links if you wanted to as well. So it's just kind of up to you what you wanted to have that link to afterwards. Or you could even theoretically run other functions if you wanted to as well, additional animations, pretty much you name it there. So that is that in a nutshell. One last thing I do want to show that actually kind of took me a second to find as well is that in JavaScript, if you don't want this to open in the same window, let's say, for example, I wanted to have this open in a pop-up window or a new window. Instead of having it open up in the main window, I could, instead of writing window location href here, I'll comment that out. Instead of writing it like that, we would just write window.open, and then we would just do the same thing here. And so now when we do that, instead of it opening up in the same window, it's going to open up a new tab and it's going to give us that. And then we can return home. And of course, we don't want to do that in this case because it's going to open up an infinite number of tabs here until we finally run out of memory or something. So we're going to go ahead and undo that. But you know, again, if for some reason you want to open up a pop-up window or something like that, that would be how you would do that here as well. That's just a little thing that I stumbled across as I was doing this. So that is that, and we'll go ahead and I will comment that one out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these other comments here that I wrote. This is just, you know, mostly for me and for anybody who again comes across this code later and wants to kind of know what the different things are here. So that is pretty much it in a nutshell. So that would be how you would play an animation using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Click a button, play the animation, and then once the animation completes, have a new page open up. So that would be how you do it. Like I said, so that took me about 2 days to figure out, and hopefully that saved you guys a lot of time and effort. And that's it for this video tutorial series, and I hope to see you for the next one. Thanks, and have a great one. Bye-bye, guys.